we could move on a bit to the administrative, or rather more administrative side of your activity at CEU.
Exciting.
Because I don't want to keep you much longer. You're heading a department. Could you say a few words about the priorities of the department, and maybe, because I assume some people would be interested, or so I hope, about what kind of candidates, the profile of a person that you see fit for studying philosophy there or in any good graduate school?
So yes, as you just mentioned, we are a graduate institute, so all our applicants come with at least first degree or second degree, not necessarily in philosophy, but at least in a related area. Basically, we're looking for good students. That's the students we would like to have. We've had quite a success so far, I should say, and we are, I think, quite special, certainly in this area, in the region, I better say. We are quite special in first being primarily an analytic department. So we are doing philosophy mainly in the analytic tradition, not only. We have people who do continental philosophy, studying Heidegger, Foucault, Gadamer, and others, but the emphasis is on the analytic tradition. So anybody who comes here will get from us a good analytic education. Doesn't have to have one, but this is something he will get in the department. And but in addition, we have a strong emphasis on the history of philosophy. And of course, we have some people who do primarily history of philosophy, ancient philosophy like Ishtan Bodnar and Gabor Mate, or early modern like Mike Griffin. But even those who do not do primarily history of philosophy, like, well, I'm doing both, but Howard Robinson, who does mainly philosophy of mind and metaphysics, or Franz Wolanski, who does also metaphysics and philosophy of action, or Philip Goff, who does philosophy of mind, consciousness, Kotlin Farkas, who does philosophy of mind and epistemology. The work of all of us is informed in significant ways from the history of philosophy. So my work on mind and on logic was influenced by by earlier philosophers, and I went back to Aristotle in order to make all sorts of modifications to contemporary logic. Howard's work is influenced by Aristotelian and Cartesian thought, as well as even more so by Berkeley's work. Koti Farkas is influenced by Descartes. And this is not a kind of additional interest, but the work of these earlier important figures is reflected in their current contributions, in the contribution to current philosophy. So this is also something quite special in the analytic tradition as well, which initially, mainly with the logical positivists, saw itself as starting a new philosophical tradition, right, more akin to...
tended to do away with the past, or regard it as more or less irrelevant. So,
yes, you don't need to go and work with the older thinkers in order to do contemporary philosophy. You don't need to do that if you do physics. You don't have to go back and read Newton or Maxwell when you study electricity, mechanics, and so on these days. So they try to transfer it to philosophy. But philosophy is apparently different, and this is the conception we have here.
Okay, that should be informative for possible candidates, and of course people can look up the website, maybe ask former students, as myself. Not that I would recommend myself, but still they can. Right, since we were talking about students and candidates, and this will be seen by about, I say, 50 people from Romania. Could you say a few words about the students or candidates that you have seen in recent year coming from this country? Maybe about their weaknesses mostly. That would interest me most. If you've seen that, you don't have to be polite, but because if we face them, maybe we can fix them?
It's hard to say. As you know, we are highly selective,
Right.
and we have had over the years very many strong Romanian students. Of course, since we emphasize the analytic tradition more than is done in Romania, the knowledge of some of our Romanian students when it comes to analytic philosophy is partial, but we try to compensate for that. Even in the MA education here, we have some wider courses which are supposed also to help with filling these holes lacking in education. But this is not
It's
a
not
kind of flaw in the formal education. Sometimes the English is not perfect, as it is with many other students coming from the region and out of the region. We have students coming from the Far East, and there also this might happen, and so on. So I don't know whether there are any special problems.
I wasn't asking about special problems, but if you've seen any kind of pattern related to the kind of education that we get, because that's what we have in common, or more or less in common, I would imagine. But I agree, probably most of our problems are shared with the people from the region. Right, to try to conclude, and I'd like to
I'd like to add something on this. I should
Sure, go ahead.
We've had quite a number of very good students from Romania over the years. This year we had two MA students who are now graduating, and they're MA, right? And one of them was admitted to Oxford for a PhD. The other one was admitted to Leeds for a PhD with funding. And we have another Romanian student who is now graduated recently, last academic year, I think, and she now has a research position at Charles University Prague. We have another Romanian student, Ada Valga, who has now a researcher position. She graduated 3 years ago. She now has a researcher position in university in Germany. We have older students who have, one is an associate professor at University Ankara, and one is now, she has been in Sheffield for a number of years, and now she's associated with the university in Scandinavia. So we have had quite a number of strong students, and we are proud with the work record that many of them have.
Right. I think it is important to emphasize there are success stories. There are probably stories that are not so successful, or something to write about. But it is important, I think, that you often act as a way to maybe a wider academic path, maybe going to do if you do a master's at CU, you can do PhDs somewhere else. It's certainly easier, or you can continue your research if you get a grant, which is an if. But if we could try to conclude this interview with maybe returning to the point where we started, because I asked you about your own education in physics and mathematics, and then moving to philosophy. I'd like to ask you, because I think you have some experience as a parent of how things are happening in school, that is before the university. I would like to ask you about the teaching of philosophy in schools. How would you think you would do it? What would you recommend? And maybe in connection to that, the relation between teaching philosophy in school, in high school especially, and teaching science, because often, especially here, they're not really related, integrated. How would you see that, given your own experience or your own context?
Yes, So there is now some sort of attempt to teach even very young children in their early years in school some philosophy. I don't like this. I think that philosophy should come later and should come. And philosophy is related to science, but not only to science. It has a more significant role to play in culture generally. It is related also to work that has been done or people do in areas like art, aesthetics. So I think that philosophy first provides many cultural references, and acquaintance with that will contribute to the works and to the in art, history, whatever, and to the understanding of these works. Philosophers like Plato, for instance, provide metaphors, points of reference to writers, to painters. You can think about Raphael's School of Athens and Thomas Mann's Death in Venice as two major classics that relate directly to Plato's work, for instance. But apart from that, philosophy has wider applications in culture, and it is very important to learn some of the highlights in order to understand Western culture. In addition to that, I can see how both in, let's say, psychology and in theoretical physics, philosophical work, ideas, have always had influence. I'm just back from a conference in cognitive psychology, and the conference was attended by speakers, keynote speakers included, from both cognitive psychology proper and philosophy. The conceptualization, understanding, clarification of things like intention, self-knowledge, consciousness, and so on, have always been central to empirical work in psychology. And psychologists turn to philosophers in order to clarify or direct the work. For better and worse, I'm not pleased with everything that is done there, but certainly it is highly influential. And similarly in physics, you can see how over the ages, philosophical contributions were pivotal to the development of some crucial ideas. Einstein was explicit on the influence of ideas coming from Marx, Kant, and David Hume on his thought and work, and how it enabled him to make all sorts of breakthroughs in his thought. This was also the case in earlier generations, as it was with Descartes, Leibniz, and others who worked in the early modern period, and in ancient work in physics. I don't have time to go into detail here, obviously. So I think that philosophy can contribute to, has contributed, and will continue to contribute to all these areas. Apart from that, the ability of critical thought is developed by doing philosophy. And this is important even if you do not continue in either philosophy or in any of the sciences. I know of many good journalists who have had a good philosophical education, and this shows in their writings to newspapers or in the interviews they conduct on the TV. In the UK, there is a kind of honorable tradition of the higher people in the political offices having had philosophical and political education in either Oxford or Cambridge. Now their circle has grown, but this is an important tradition, and the familiarity with the theoretical ideas, with critical thought, and with the other possibilities and approaches to these issues in politics has contributed to the political culture of Britain. Of course, it's not the only important ingredient, But it is an important ingredient, and it has always been. And much of the contemporary political culture is a result also of philosophical work that has been done by Locke, Montesquieu, Rousseau, and others over the centuries.
But increasingly, especially in this region or in this country at least, philosophy is being left out or given a marginal role in high school curriculum, for example. And I think it is important to emphasize the impact that this might have, not for knowing something about philosophy or about its history, but as you pointed out, the wider implications are in a sense more important. I think we could conclude here. Thank you. Or if you want to maybe wrap it up, if you have maybe a message for a student or high school student studying philosophy, maybe that would be a nice way to wrap it up, and we could stop here.
Well, my advice to the student is open one of the classics, Plato, Descartes, Russell, Nietzsche, Wittgenstein. It's interesting, you would enjoy it. It will make you